Let's start first of all with the size, the athletic ability, the intelligence, the character. All those things are exceptional. Exactly what you want from the position. Now, does he have a huge power arm? No. I do think he possesses enough arm to make all the throws. To me, I think he's got all the tools that you need. I think a little bit of a challenge in the evaluation is what he played with. Yeah, I'd love to coach there in David Cutcliffe. But Buck, he has not played with a draftable player.
Some of the things that we like to see from quarterbacks, how do they handle adversity? How do they handle situations where they don't have everything lined up for them? With Daniel Jones, we see that play out on tape. You talked about him being smart, tough. I think he's efficient, a solid, underrated dual threat quarterback. When I look at him, he reminds me a little bit of a mix of two players, Alex Smith and Ryan Tannehill. In Alex Smith, I see the efficiency, I see the playmaking ability, I see his ability to consistently connect the dots in a system where he's surrounded by playmakers. In Ryan Tannehill, I see a little bit of the athleticism, a little bit of, I would say, some of the rawness that Ryan Tannehill entered the league in. And when he's played at his best, Tannehill has been a winning quarterback. And so somewhere in between Smith and Tannehill, I believe, is where Jones lies. But I think that's certainly good enough to be a starting quarterback that wins a number of games in the league.
Interesting you use those names. I had Tannehill, to me, is kind of the floor. That's what you're hoping he's going to be. The worst case scenario is you get somebody that can be a productive starter in the right system. But the other thing, look, if you're shooting for the moon, like what could he be if everything clicks, everything goes perfect? To me, Matt Ryan. He's a little more athletic than Matt Ryan, but I think size, arm strength, being a good decision maker, that to me, I think that's what you're hoping. If you draft Daniel Jones in the first round, man, you're hoping that this is going to turn out to be another Matt Ryan, in my opinion. We're talking about him a little bit as a player. Let's learn about him as a person, and who better to talk to than his parents?
For those that don't know, me and Bucky have done our homework, and we know the background of athletics in your family, how important it is, and just all the athletes you guys have there in the Jones family. So if you can, just let the folks at home know what the athletic background is of the other children, and then how competitive. I would imagine it was pretty competitive, whether it was ping pong or shooting hoops, playing horse, whatever. I'd imagine it was a very competitive household.
Yeah. I still think one of the best investments I ever made was a 72-inch Gorilla basketball goal and a lot of concrete. Every night, just about every night, they were all together after a certain age. Even when Ruthie was very small, there was a lot of 2-on-2, and it was a lot of battling. And I think they all benefited from that type of playing together. They did it in soccer and anything in the yard. They were so they picked each other on, as Mom said in something earlier, and it worked. And we really, nobody, I don't think you can map it out. I don't think you can say, this kid's going to do this and this one's going to do that. But what you can say is have fun. And, don't care what you play, but play something. Don't just sit here. And that's been the attitude. And Mom's a pretty good manager when it comes to that type of activity. So.
Well, if I can take credit for anything, I'll say the one thing I said when they were little is, go outside.
That sounds funny, but not many people go outside anymore. You have to tell these kids to go outside, or they just hang inside all day long.
Yeah, well, I kind of expected them and wanted them to be dirty by the time dinner rolled around. So it was always, please go outside and play.
Was there a moment when you're like, hey, Daniel, I know you want to play this week, but why don't we go ahead and give that thing a couple more weeks to heal? What were those conversations like from a mother and her son?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Daniel, because that's been sort of happening from the beginning. And he's been he was small really up until his junior and senior years. So I never have really exhaled from all these sports that he's chosen to put himself in. And really I've supported it all along. I don't want to say that, but looking at some of his 9th and 10th grade pictures out on the football field, I see, what mother would have allowed her child to play being that size. But so if I were going to be that way, I would have started a long time ago, because I kind of knew getting into Duke that it was going to be a situation where he wanted to play every down. And so when he's been hurt through the last couple of years, I've just sort of been in that role of supporting and, being there just for emotional support more than anything else, knowing that he's going to play every down as soon as he possibly could.
You know,
That's a mother. That's also a mother. That's mother. 2 or 3 things. First, she's pretty competitive. Second is she likes her kids to be happy, and Daniel's not happy.
Oh yeah,
he's not happy on the sideline.
right. You don't want to deal with Daniel
You
when
kind of
he's
put
on
those
the
things
sideline.
together, and you go, I'm not so sure it's so bad after all. Go ahead.
No, that thing's fine. That's sufficiently healed. Go back out there, son. Go get him.
Yeah.
All right, Buck, get a chance there to talk to the parents and hear what they say about their son. Man, I always feel like those are some insightful conversations.
Oh, those are definitely some insightful conversations. And I love the way his mom and dad both talked about his competitiveness and how he was determined and driven to kind of find a way using football as the vehicle. And so when we dig deeper and we look for those guys that make it, sometimes they make it simply because their will and their desire helps them overcome any challenges that they face along the way.
I'll get a chance to talk to the parents. Let's get another look at it from inside the Jones family. We had a chance, by the way, very athletic family, as we all know, had a chance to talk with his sister as well.
So we've got Becca Jones joining us right now to talk about her brother, Daniel. And Becca, let me just start off with a softball. Who's the best athlete in the Jones family? Let's start right there. You guys are all so athletic.
Boy.
I want you to make somebody in your family really mad right now. Tell me who the best athlete in the family is.
No, the go-to answer has got to be Ruthie. She is probably the most decorated of all of us. With her time with the
field hockey, right?
She's soccer.
Soccer.
I'm field
Oh, that's
hockey.
right. You're field
Yeah,
hockey. She's
so-
soccer. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. So we always joke that Ruthie is going to become the president of the United States because she's just the best at anything she decides to do. She's just automatically the best at somehow. So, but no, she's a great goalie and a great athlete.
She's been on like a national team, right? Like the under-17 national
She
team?
has.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So she's traveled to the coolest places by far.
So
That's phenomenal.
I think it's great, obviously, when you have brothers and sisters that are athletic. How competitive was it, that environment growing up when everyone is a pretty decorated athlete? What were those battles like, and what do you think Daniel may have learned from those competitive battles with his brothers and sisters?
Yeah, no, it's funny. So we had a full-on backyard basketball circuit. Like, we're talking like tournament brackets, like uniforms, like the full deal. And it was always me and Bates versus Daniel and Ruthie were the teams. And so we would have very heated 2-on-2 basketball in the backyard. But no, I think it was funny. We would play, best out of 5 games or whatever leading up to dinner. And whenever, if Daniel was ever on the losing side, it was one more game, last game wins every single time. Like, we're not going to get out of here until Daniel has finished with a win. Like, we're going to go eat dinner, and then we're going to have to come back and play another game after dinner because Daniel will not be able to handle getting off the court without a win.
He comes across, when you meet him, especially off the football field, he's just a nice, you'll use the word reserved a little bit to describe his personality, but then you talk to folks around Duke and they said when it's go time, he's ready to go. Can you give me an example? Like, has he been mad? Like, have you seen your brother get in a fight? Like, has he been has anybody gotten under his skin and really been able to get that anger that I just can't imagine exists after speaking with him?
Of all people, it's Bates. Bates has borne the brunt of the Daniel slam into the concrete. It's happened. It's happened before. No, but he's typically a pretty even keel. He keeps a cool head, but I've seen him throw, an elbow in the stomach of some kid, or,
See, that's what I'm
Bates
talking
has
about.
Experienced it.
That's what I'm talking about, Becca. It's the elbows to the stomach. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. I love that.
No, he's got it. He's definitely got it.
So in thinking about that, a lot of times when people on the outside look in at Daniel, they worry about the quiet demeanor. Is he soft-spoken? So when you talk about his competitiveness, How does that kind of come out or manifest itself despite the quiet demeanor that is kind of his outward appearance?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, to me, I've always seen it as, who comes out in the end on the winning side of things. And that, 9 times out of 10 is Daniel. Like, I've seen him, it's a Y basketball game for 8-year-olds. And he's just like, you know what, I'm going to crank this 3 from, I'm going to take over this situation. And I think he's always kind of had that mentality. Like, when it's time to step up, and, it has to be me sometimes. And I think he does a good job I've always seen him, he's a teammate, but he understands, when I'm the best player in a given situation, it's time to step up and make plays.
I love her personality. That was a fun talk.
Yeah, fun conversation. And she shared some light on, I guess, Daniel's stick-to-itiveness in terms of his willingness. He will not let it go. If he's taking an L, he is determined that he's going to win at the end of the day. And I think that speaks volumes about how he's wired, and it's one of the reasons why you can see teams falling in love with him as a potential franchise quarterback.
Yeah, she spoke about some of those epic battles there on the basketball court there at the Jones household. I'd like to be a fly on the wall and see some of those take place. I know any of us with siblings play sports. We all have those stories. Fun to hear those there from the Jones family. All right, let's go back to the high school days here for Daniel Jones. There at Charlotte Latin School in North Carolina. Thankfully, you and Rhett had a chance to catch up with the head man there, Larry McNulty.
All right, Coach, great to have you here with us. Look, I'm looking at your resume here. 11 state championships in, if my math is correct, 32 years. You're basically winning a state title once every 3 years.
Yeah, it was actually 12, but that's okay.
Okay, 12. Who's counting? My goodness. Congratulations on a terrific career. I know you retired as the head coach at Charlotte Latin after the 2017 season. Which means you had a chance to get Daniel Jones for his entire high school career. And Bucky and I were just looking here, and we saw that you used to call him Swag. Is that right?
Yeah, I still call him Swag. I called him Swag at his pro day on Tuesday, and he snapped around. He knew exactly who was calling him Swag. I called him Swag since he was in about 9th grade.
And why is that? Why did that come to be?
Well, he just had this. He's not a boisterous, he's not an outgoing, rah-rah, yell and scream Johnny Manziel kind of quarterback. He leads with a unique, quiet confidence, and he just had this air about him. And all the coaches and all the kids were like, Coach, there's something special about young Daniel. And I'll get back to what he looked like when he first got going. But I said, he's got swag. And everybody went, yeah, that's what it is. He's got swag. And pretty soon, everybody on campus was calling him Swag.
That's
it.
That's great.
He's Swag.
That's funny, Coach. I think you speak about something that I guess scouts are always curious about because he is so understated in his demeanor. You wonder, can he be a guy that commands the room? How is he as a leader for you and your team?
I don't think there's a person at our school, including football players, teachers, administrators, the coaching staff, that doesn't hold Daniel Jones at the highest level of respect. And the kids on our football team would absolutely go through a fire for that kid. And I run into those guys around town all the time, and they're going like, Coach, Daniel Jones was awesome. He's the man. He was the guy that fueled us. Now, he didn't stand up in front of everybody and wave a banner and a pom-pom all the time. But, when he hit the practice field, it was all business. And he was one of those kind of guys that would rally the kids around him. And I talked to some of the Duke players when I was up at the pro day, and they said the same thing. They said, we love Daniel Jones. So, he's as great off the field as he is on.
Well, I think a little bit of his story certainly speaks to that, Coach, kind of ending up at Duke after a kind of a quiet recruitment, and then, going from a walk-on to becoming a two-time captain and the starting quarterback at Duke. It takes an ability to endear yourself to that team, to be able to jump in and become that kind of leader and that kind of face of the program, if you will. Am I right?
Yeah, and it wasn't too much different at Latin. When he was a sophomore and we started camp, he was not slated to be the number one quarterback. He was 5'11", 145
5'11",
pounds.
he's 6'5" now.
Yeah, I used to tease him. He had to run around the shower to get wet. He was so skinny. And to no fault of his own, within the second game of the season, he ends up being our starter. And we weren't great, but we were okay. But in about the sixth game of the year, we went over and played Charlotte Christian, who's one of our biggest rivals. They had a kid by the name of Jeff Blazevich who went on to Georgia to start as a tight end for them over there. And he might be in the NFL still. I think he had a shot.
Sure.
And Jeff was a defensive end, and he got a clean run at Daniel Jones at 5'11", 145. And he launched him about 5 feet in the air, and he landed in a heap. He finally struggled over the sideline, and his helmet's sideways. He's looking through his ear hole. The face mask is busted. And I'm fearful he can't even play. I thought he was done for the night. I said, Daniel, are you all right, dude? He goes, Coach, get me a damn helmet and get me back out there. And he missed one play. And I turned to one of my assistant coaches and I said, dude, we got something here. This kid's got it. And he's hard as nails. And that kind of personality just makes other people want to play for you and with you.
You know, Coach, you talk about his toughness and his courage in terms of being able to get back from that situation. What is he like in critical moments? When the game is on the line and you have to hand the ball and say, Daniel, go make a play. How did he respond in those situations?
Well, we never had a lot of problem with him in any regard in tough situations. He played in quite a few big games for us, and really some of his best performances were in the big games. And I know in one instance we were playing in a state semifinal, and the team did a really good job of defending our passing game, and we just say, hey, let's go the zone run. Now he rushed for like 160 yards and just decided he was going to take over running the ball. He's a much more adequate runner than people give him credit for. You know, he's not super quick feet, but once he gets rolling, he's pretty good. So to answer your question, he always responded well for us in pressure.
You know, DJ, what was so great about talking to Coach was finding out things that you would never expect to hear about Daniel Jones. The fact that he was called swag and that he had so much confidence and how he exuded that confidence that his teammates picked up from it, and it gave them confidence. A lot of what we look for in quarterbacks are the intangibles, the qualities that aren't seen necessarily on the field, but you feel them. I think in talking to his coach, Daniel Jones has a bigger presence than maybe we get when we just kind of look at him from the outside in.
Yeah, that's why you got to get inside on the inside there and try and discover and learn more about these players. Great insight there from his high school coach. All right, from high school coach to college coach, his coach there at Duke, legendary David Cutcliffe, who's been around the Mannings and has a reputation as strong as any coach in college football. Unfortunately, had a chance to sit down with Coach Cutcliffe at the Duke Pro Day. All right, Coach. Well, first of all, thank you so much for opening up the doors for us here today and giving us some hospitality for this Daniel Jones workout. But first question, I want to go back to when you first saw Daniel Jones as a high schooler, and what were your impressions?
Well, there were two different times. One was in Camp Young coming out of the 10th grade, and I thought he looked like a basketball player. His high school coach, who's here today, called me as he was about a little past midway through his season. He said, I think my quarterback's better than where he's being recruited. Do you mind looking at him? And I looked at him and I called Larry right back. I said, do not call anyone else. He had gone from basketball player to football player, and he did a lot of things naturally well. But I knew that he had a shot at being special, and boy, was I right.
Obviously, your history with Peyton and Eli and the quarterbacks you've been around, but what is it you're looking for in a quarterback?
Well, it all starts with accuracy, and then you're going to train a quarterback from the neck up and then the neck down. And this part of it, this mechanical part of it, takes a lot of athleticism because you can't think, you just have to do. And as I watched him as a redshirt freshman, he had the accuracy, and regardless of when he was going against our starting defense, his ability to manage his body, to think, to play, to adjust, and stay accurate. That's what I always look for. And then, obviously you're always looking for a great person, and he's that.
Everything intangible-wise, just talking to everybody around the program today, seems to be off the charts. Work ethic, intelligence, being a great teammate. One of the things I found interesting is I know he came in here technically as a walk-on. He got a scholarship before he even got on the practice field. But they say he'll take the walk-on kids under his wing here.
He does. He embraces every teammate. It was interesting, the story that 2 of our walk-on players designed the device, the protective device for his clavicle, allowed him to come back earlier. How appropriate is that? But Daniel Jones is a really nice young man, and he's got this, this youthful look. And I think some people probably misread that as to being a guy that's not a fierce competitor and not tough. Don't challenge him. He is physically and mentally tough.
Well, Buck, when you get the stamp of approval from Coach Cutcliffe, or Coach Cut as everybody likes to call him, it's not going to hurt you with NFL teams, because when it comes to reputation, I said a little bit earlier, none better than David Cutcliffe.
No, none better. Great coach, great mentor, great quarterback developer. The things that he's done with all of the quarterbacks that he has encountered has been remarkable. He has had a ton of guys go from Duke and have their shots in the National Football League. Daniel Jones will be his highest profile prospect. But in Daniel Jones, I think he was able to recognize a guy that came on as a walk-on and worked his way into being the starter and then being a 2-time captain. David Cutcliffe deserves a lot of credit for unearthing a diamond in the rough in Daniel Jones.
All right, Buck, great again to catch up with Coach Cutcliffe. There's another person in Daniel Jones' football life, though, that we need to talk to, and that's a former disciple of Coach Cutcliffe. That is QB Country's David Morris. He has been kind of the private quarterback coach for Daniel Jones for quite some time. I had a chance to catch up with him. When was the first time that you met Daniel Jones, and when did you start working with him?
So his dad, Steve, called me, I think when Daniel was a sophomore, 10th grade at Charlotte Latin, and they came down, and really ever since then probably saw him 3-4 times a year, and lots of the time, even in high school, Daniel would come by himself, literally get a cab or a Uber to the facility and train and head back out. One of those things that stood out early was just how much football meant to him, and how far he would go to work hard, and not much has changed. So,
as somebody who's been on the player side of things and then now on the coaching side of things, I think we throw out the word coachable a lot, and I think most people assume that every kid is coachable, right? Not the case, as I'm sure you've learned over the years. How would you describe Daniel in terms of taking the instruction you've been handing out to him over the years?
He's been great. We've built a relationship that he knows I'm going to coach him hard, tell him the truth, and I know that he's going to give me his best, and also kind of speak up when he doesn't understand something, or when he's not quite following what we're covering. I think so much of the coaching and teaching aspect is the communication side of things, and the ability to make sure the kid knows why we're going over certain things. But Daniel Jones is an absolute student of the game. He loves the learning process. He loves the working process. He's a gym rat, a football junkie. All that stuff absolutely applies to him. But I think he's grown every year, and it's one of those things that he's completely bought in. And I think with his time at Duke as well, I think if you go back and you talk to Coach Cut or Rope, those guys would tell you that he's a great listener and he's a student.
Personality-wise, how would you describe him? You know him extremely well. How would you describe his personality?
Very confident, very comfortable in his own shoes. He's a guy that he knows when to speak up. But as I mentioned earlier, he's a great listener. He has the ability. He wins his teammates early. His teammates love him.
Mm-hmm.
They respect him. I would say he is very aggressive, but he handles it in a manner that is very controlled. You're not going to see a lot of freak out from him. He's one of the toughest guys I've ever been around. He's a fighter. He's fought his way to where he is now, and I think it's one of those things where he's not trying to do it somebody else's way. He's very confident in the way that he leads.
Yeah, Buck, it's always helpful when you get these guys that spend a lot of time around these prospects and training them and getting them ready. A lot of insight there from David Morris.
Yeah, a lot of insight, and I'm not surprised. Look, David Morris knows quarterback play. He obviously played behind Eli Manning, was reared under David Cutcliffe, so he's been able to share those nuggets. And so their relationship is a special one. It's one that has helped Daniel Jones grow into one of the top prospects at his position, one that we are both excited to see as he makes his way into the National Football League.
All right, Buck, great to hear from everybody else around Daniel Jones, but we both had an opportunity to talk to Daniel Jones himself during this draft process. You chatted with him at the Combine. I had a chance to sit down with him at his pro day there in Durham a couple weeks ago. Let's take a listen to those chats.
So you have a unique background because you have guys that have really developed other guys, David Cutcliffe, then your quarterback coach David Morris and all those guys. What have you been able to learn from them along the way to really kind of help you get ready for the next level?
I think there's a lot of things. Going back to Duke, Coach Cut and Coach Roper, I think I'm prepared from a processing standpoint and kind of an understanding of playing the position in the game. And hopefully that's prepared me. I understand that the NFL is the next step. It's even more that way. But I think I'm ready for it, and that's been good for me. But I think the common theme with all those guys is just how serious they take practice, being on the practice field. I think with Coach Cut, it always starts on the practice field, developing practice habits, and that's something that David has carried into his coaching and something that he takes very seriously. So I think I'll definitely carry that with me for the rest of my career.
So coming from your background, you're a guy, like, admittedly, you weren't a big-time or a five-star recruit. You kind of earned your way and worked your way up at Duke and put yourself in a position to be here now. What has going the long way, the hard way, taught you to kind of get you ready to be a franchise quarterback?
I think even back to when I was a little guy, when I was, Pop Warner in middle school, I was always a younger guy. I was always a smaller guy. Physically now I'm, in a position physically to play, but I wasn't always that way. So I think just kind of growing up like that, competing like that, taught me a lot about, toughness first and foremost, being competitive and just kind of fighting. I think I've always had to fight. So, hopefully now that physically I'm caught up, and physically I feel like I'm in a good place to take this step. I think those things, kind of that fight, that competitive nature, are really what are gonna make me successful in the NFL.
Unlike some quarterbacks, you played a bunch of sports in high school, 3 sports stand out. How did playing other sports kind of round out your game? It made you a better player overall.
I think it's just the will to compete. Every season you're competing again, and you're competing in a different way, but it's at the end of the day, it's competition. I think that's the main thing in all that. But, I think there's certain skills and certain, movement patterns in all sports that you learn and you develop over time, and those carry over for sure, back and forth.
Obviously, with Coach Cutcliffe and his history with the Manning family, I know you've got a chance to know Peyton and Eli especially. What have you taken from them? What advice have they given you as you're going through this process?
I've been lucky to have those relationships, and obviously Coach Cut and his help in forming those relationships has been awesome and a huge part of my Duke experience. I think talking to Peyton a little bit through this process. When I was making the decision, he said, I remember he said, whatever you decide to do, whatever decision you make, people are going to, say good things or say bad things, and it's up to you to prove, those people right or wrong. You're in charge of your story. You're writing the story. So I thought that was, a good way to look at it, and coming from a guy like that, you're going to certainly listen to it.
All right, Buck, I think you can see the personality start to come out a little bit with Daniel Jones. He definitely is business-like, business-oriented, but you see the little glimpses there, that personality pop through.
Oh, it does pop through. I think sometimes you can't judge a book by its cover. I think he's far more competitive I think he has a little more presence than we were initially led to believe. I think it comes out as he gets more comfortable, and the more that we've interacted with him, the more we begin to see the natural Daniel Jones come out. And so I think his teammates will eventually gravitate towards him. It's just a matter of him being in that locker room day after day after day.
All right, if I was going to say two teams of where he could end up, and we're going to just give two landing spots, I would say the Giants, I would say 17. I know they have pick 6 and pick 17. I think pick 17 will make some sense. They go defensive lineman at 6, and a little bit of a roll the dice, hoping that they would get Daniel Jones there at 17. I think that could be a landing spot for him. If he does not go to the Giants, they could punt on the quarterback situation and roll with Eli Manning for another year. That's been a theory that's out there. If they don't go quarterback, I don't see him going to the Redskins. I do see potentially the Los Angeles Chargers would be the next one I would keep an eye on there at the bottom of the first round as a landing spot.
It's funny that you said that because before you were writing it, I wrote down Chargers at 28. Part of the reason why I believe the Chargers at 28, I think the temperament of the offensive coordinator, Ken Wisenhunt, is perfect for him. I think the temperament of the starting quarterback, Phillip Rivers, is perfect for him. I think he will thrive in those environments. Same can be said for Daniel going to New York with Eli and playing under Shermer. Those things would work. I would worry a little bit about Pittsburgh just because of the Big Ben situation and all the chaos that is kind of taking place in that locker room. I would like to make sure that he goes to a place that is solid, that is stable, that allows him to grow, because I do believe he can grow into a solid quarterback. Those two situations right there, to me, are perfect situations for him to kind of flourish as a developmental player.
Click here to subscribe to the NFL YouTube channel and click here to subscribe to the Move the Sticks podcast.